Hello everybody, Kevin here with Kevin's Way Works. So in this video we're going to pick back up with the vertical arcade cabinet build. So I'm going to focus on finishing up the actual build of the cabinet, and what I am going to do is I'm going to give it some primer, going to give it a little bit of sanding, maybe some paint, and I'm going to apply a laminate to the sides. So stick around guys, I think you're going to enjoy this one. Alright, so what I have here is just a plain old can of Rust-Oleum automotive primer, and this one is black in color, and the reason I'm using black is because the cabinet is going to be dark in color. Actually, it's going to be black. And if you were to use something lighter in color, like a gray or a white, if you were to get any little type of chip or scratch, you're going to see that gray or white through it. So by using a black primer, if you were to get any little chips or scrapes, you're not going to see white, you're going to see black. So that is the reasoning behind using a dark primer with a dark spray paint. All right guys, here is the part that I left you hanging with on the previous video, and this is the laminate. This is actually a Formica brand laminate. So I'm going to flip this over. I want to cut it from the back side. It kind of has a texture on it that makes it easier to cut. It's kind of intimidating at first if you've never used a laminate like this, but don't be worried. It's actually really easy to work with. I'm just marking it up right now with a tape measure and a pencil. So I have a board clamped on here as a straight edge, and I'm just using a sharp razor blade. Here we go, we just give it a little bend and it snaps right off. And then what I did is I just measured the center point and I cut it down the center using another piece of wood as a guide. And it snaps super easily. So now I have two equal pieces that we're going to use for each side. As you can see from this profile, there's a whole bunch of little hairs from the fibers from the wood. So when you put the primer on it, it sticks to all those hairs. They harden up and they're real easy to sand. I did not show it, but I did sand everything. So after sanding it, you got to get rid of all the little dust that's clogging up the pores of the wood. I find that the easiest way to do it is just to take my air compressor and a spray nozzle and just spray it on off. All right, so now that that is all sprayed off and dust free, I'm going to put some tape around the edge here. And the reason for that is I don't want contact cement to get all stuck around the edge. So I'm just using a quart-size Weldwood contact cement. You can get this in any hardware store. So I'm going to give it a good stir because this has been sitting on the shelf for a while. It does have all the materials inside separated out. All right, so right now I'm not actually gluing this laminate down. I'm putting it on here so I can mark the front of it. I don't want to put contact cement where I don't have to. And so by marking it, it gives me areas where I can skip. I'm only going to put contact cement on where it has to go, and as you can see, I pretty much followed the layout of the cabinet when I put it on. I did go over a little bit just in case I was off when I put the laminate down, but I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to have enough glue to do this. So just to be safe, I went ahead and I only put it down where it needed to go. So I'm actually putting 2 coats on everything. I don't think I show myself putting 2 coats on the laminate, but I did put 2 coats on it. I was able to do both sides using almost the entire can of the Weldwood contact cement. Okay, now that we have all of the contact cement down and it has dried to a tacky surface, I'm taking a whole bunch of little pieces of wood. I found a bunch of dowels and trim pieces, and I'm putting them on the surface here, and that will allow me to set the laminate on top of it without it sticking down prematurely. So now that it's on there, I'm pulling out some sticks in the middle. Make sure everything is lined up. You have enough trim off, and I'm going to go ahead and just gently push it down here in the center, and I'm going to then start pulling pieces of wood out, and I'm working my way outward towards the ends to be sure that I don't trap any air bubbles. So one thing I do not have is a heavy roller, and you really want to roll your laminate well so the contact cement makes a good bond. I did not have a roller, so I'm trying various different things here. In the end, I found out that it worked really well if I just took a paper towel and I used my body weight and I pressed down all over. So that should be perfectly fine. I mean, I don't see this coming apart. This contact cement, once it sticks to itself, it's stuck pretty much permanently. So right now I'm using a laminate bit, and what it does is it rides on the wood and it cuts the laminate flush with the wood. And so that's just getting rid of all the excess that I don't need. All right, so if you remember from one of my earlier videos, I mentioned how I made a mistake. And that mistake is I rounded over the edge of the wood on both sides. I did not mean to do that. I only meant to do the inside. What I'm showing you here now is how I am going to fix my mistake. And I found out that if I take this profile bit and the curved area lines up perfectly with the part that I had previously rounded over, and it has a square edge on it. And so this square edge, what I'm going to do is cut the edge of the laminate square with that edge And then the rounded part pretty much is just going to cut nothing because it's going to be where the wood is already rounded. So right here I'm just showing you a test I did to make sure that that bit is actually doing what I think it's going to do, and it looks great. So I have it in the router, and I'm just going to continue all the way around the front area, and we're going to give it that profile. And as you can see, it looks awesome. It turned out perfect. So my mistake ended up not really being a mistake. Everything worked out exactly as I had planned, air quotes. So, and as you can see, it looks awesome. So I'm happy with it. So now what I want to do is when you hit up laminate with a router bit, it leaves a little rough edge and it's kind of sharp. You actually can cut yourself on it. So I'm just going to take some sandpaper and a block of wood, and I'm going to go around and I'm basically going to give it a little bit of a bevel. And so that bevel just makes it so it's nice and smooth and you don't cut yourself on it. All right, guys, just going over, showing you how everything looks. It looks awesome. Now we are going to have to paint those. I'll show you that later on. So now what we're going to do is work on the other side where the laminate goes, and I'm just sanding it smooth to get any burrs and any other high spots off. So I'll just hit it up with my air compressor and a blower nozzle. And I found out when I did the other side that I did not need that tape. If you're careful, you're not going to get glue around all the edges, so I went ahead and I just skipped the tape. So I'm just going to apply the 2 coats, both on the wood and the laminate. And this time I did actually show me applying the 2nd coat on the laminate. And the same thing, I'll go ahead and carefully work down from the center out, removing each piece of wood as I go. And I'm not going to show you me trying to make it all nice and squeezed down tight using the rollers and the paper towels this time. I'm just going to go straight into hitting it up with a router. So here I go again with using the flush cut laminate bit just to get the excess trimmed off, and then I'm going to hit it up with that profile bit to give it that nice profile I was aiming for. Just finishing up with a little bit of sandpaper to remove the burrs around the edge of the laminate. And now let's move on to the paint. So to remove all those little hairs and other little fibers and things that were in the wood, I'm going to go ahead and just take a sanding block and hit those up. So basically you're just sanding off the little fibers and a little bit of the actual primer itself to give a nice smooth surface, so when you go ahead and paint, you won't have to worry about that stuff. It'll already be fixed with the primer. And so I'm just going to wipe it off with a dampened paper towel, and we'll be ready to get it masked off so we can paint it. So I actually have this little paper roll left over from when my kids were little, and this is like from an artwork easel type set, and it has a little thing where you can rip off paper and use it for your easel. So I figured I'd just go ahead and use that since I have a whole bunch of it left over, and it works great for projects like this. All right, now that I have that all taped off, here you go. This is what it looks like. Any places where I didn't have any paper, I just filled it in with some tape. All right, so what I'm using here is a Krylon matte black spray paint. And if you ask me, it's more of a semi-gloss, but I mean, in the end, it does turn out okay, but you have to let it dry for like a week. So after a week, you do end up with that matte black finish that you're aiming for, but by looking at my video, you really wouldn't guess that that's what it's gonna turn out to be. So here, you can see this is only a few minutes after spray painting it, and it is very shiny, which you would expect, but that's okay. More on that later. So now what I'm doing is I'm working on the frame that's going to hold the monitor, or actually in this case it's a TV, and I decided to put some tape on it just to keep any spray paint from getting on the foam. And I ran out of the black primer, so I'm going to go ahead and use this Krylon matte black, and it is a primer slash paint. The only issue is I had to let it dry a little longer before I could sand it. I tried sanding it after a few hours and it gummed up the sandpaper. So I let it dry for a few days, hit it up with a sanding sponge just to knock any little fibers down. And I'm finishing it up with the same paint that I used on the console itself. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's a textured paint. So it's got a little bit of a texture to it. and I think it looks pretty good. So as you saw, everything turned out fine with that. We'll go ahead and set that aside and we'll let it dry for a few days. All right, let's go back to the main cabinet, see what it looks like. And as you can see, this is after a couple days of drying, guys. It still looks really shiny. I was expecting it to be a little more matte. This is not a matte finish. This is almost like a semi-gloss. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it like it is, but what I decided is I don't like that on the actual console here itself. So I'm going to spray paint it with the same paint I put on the actual frame that goes around the TV. I noticed there are some little areas where the paint ran. So I'm taking a brand new razor blade on its edge and I'm just scraping off the high spots. And that's just a trick for removing runs and other junk in paint before you put a finish coat on them. So now that those are removed, I'm going to put some tape around it and I'm going to take some rubbing alcohol and just give it a good cleaning. And now that that is done, I'm going to throw on some of that same silver textured paint onto the console. I think I ended up putting 5 coats on. It really didn't need that many, but I figured I'd go ahead and do it. So what I did first is I went horizontal and then I went vertical and then I actually went diagonal. So actually I think there's 4 coats now that I think about it. So I did diagonal for 2 additional coats. And once this is slightly tacky, I am pulling off the tape. That's so you don't end up actually peeling the paint off of the surface you want to keep. So by peeling it off while it's still slightly sticky and wet, it keeps that from happening. And as you guys can see, this looks way better than just having the black like it had originally. Now this is the funny part. So when I put this tape on here, it would not stick to the black foam. Well, now I'm trying to peel it off and it's sticking so tight to the black foam that it's peeling the black foam off. But in the end, I just managed to get it off without it damaging it too badly, and everything turned out good. So what I am doing at this point is installing the screws that are going to hold that frame in place. And I'm just going to go ahead and screw this frame on in. And there's a bunch of screws, so we're going to go ahead and skip all that, and we're going to play with Lola. So as you can see, Miss Lola came down to visit. She's actually really hungry. She wants some treats. And she's coming down asking me for some treats. So right now I'm asking her, you want some cookies? She's like, yes, sir. Give me some cookies now. So I take a little break, give Lola some cookies. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take this TV, we're gonna go ahead and install it, and I'm gonna take a break because I have a whole bunch more content that just can't fit into a single video. So there's going to be another video. I think at least 2 more videos. I think that will be it. The next one, we're going to get into finishing up the actual cabinet itself. There's still a bunch more that needs to be done. And then after that, I'll go into the specifics of how I set up the software and got everything working. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this part of the series, and I hope you guys stick around for the rest of the build. And as always, I want to thank you for watching Kevin's Way Works.
Uh-oh.